The boardroom felt suffocating as I sat there, watching James pace in front of the projection screen. His expensive suit and perfectly coiffed hair screamed success, while his smirk spoke volumes about how he viewed me, the grieving widow who needed to be managed. "The numbers don't lie," he said, clicking to the next slide. "Since David's passing 6 months ago, our stock has dropped 15%. The market is losing confidence in quantum tech's leadership. My name is Rachel Chen, and 6 months ago, I lost my husband to a car accident. Today, I was about to lose his company too, or so my brother-in-law thought. Our shareholders are nervous," James continued, his voice dripping with fake concern. "They're worried about having well, let's be honest here, a housewife controlling 51% of a major tech company." The other board members shifted uncomfortably. They'd known me for years as David's wife, the woman who hosted company parties and attended charity events on his arm. The woman who, as far as they knew, had no technical background, no business experience, no qualifications beyond being married to their brilliant CEO. If only they knew. "Rachel," James turned to me, his expression a masterpiece of condescending concern. "You know David would want what's best for the company. My proposal is more than generous. We'll buy your shares at a premium. You can keep the house, the cars, maintain your lifestyle. But let those of us who understand this industry take control." I looked down at the proposal in front of me, fighting to keep my expression neutral. The generous offer would indeed keep me wealthy, but it would give James complete control of quantum tech, the company David and I had built from nothing. "And if I refuse?" I asked quietly. James's smile tightened. "Then I'll be forced to call for a vote of no confidence. The board already supports me. They know you're not qualified to make decisions about quantum computing and AI development." "I see." I closed the folder containing his proposal. "And what about Project Phoenix?" The room went silent. Project Phoenix was quantum tech's most closely guarded secret, a revolutionary quantum encryption system that could change the face of cybersecurity. As far as the world knew, it was David's final project, still in development. James' confidence faltered for a moment. "Project Phoenix is proceeding according to schedule." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "So you understand the modifications I made to the quantum entanglement algorithm last week? The ones that increased efficiency by 40%? His face went blank. Around the table, board members started whispering to each other. "What modifications?" James demanded. "David's original design was flawed," I cut in. "It couldn't scale beyond local networks. The new architecture I implemented allows for global deployment while maintaining quantum coherence." The whispers grew louder. James's face reddened. "You expect us to believe you understand quantum computing? You've never even worked in tech." I smiled, thinking about the past 5 years, about the late nights working alongside David, developing algorithms, solving problems that had stumped the industry's best minds, about our decision to keep my involvement secret, knowing how the tech world would react to a female Asian developer, especially one married to the CEO. "Actually," I said, standing up and walking to the computer connected to the projector, "I've been working in tech for longer than you have, James. I just did it under a different name." I typed quickly, logging into a secure server. The screen filled with code, the core architecture of Project Phoenix. "Do you recognize this coding style?" I asked the board members. "It's remarkably similar to the work of R.C. Wang, isn't it?" The effect was immediate. Everyone in tech knew R.C. Wang, the mysterious developer whose innovations had driven quantum tech's success for the past 5 years. The genius who never appeared in public, never gave interviews, communicating only through code commits and technical documentation. "That's impossible," James sputtered. "R.C. Wang is." "Me," I said simply. "Rachel Chen Wang." David and I decided early on that my work would be judged more fairly if people didn't know I was his wife. So we created a persona, the reclusive genius who just happened to collaborate brilliantly with quantum tech's CEO. I pulled up more files, years of development logs, emails between David and me discussing technical details, video recordings of us working late in our home office. David wasn't just my husband. I continued, my voice soft but firm. He was my partner in every sense. We built this company together. The only difference is he did it publicly while I worked in the shadows. The board members were staring at their tablets, where I just sent copies of all the documentation. James looked like he'd been hit by a truck. "This is a trick," he said weakly. "Some sort of deception. Would you like me to explain exactly how the quantum entanglement modifications work?" I offered. "Or maybe you prefer to discuss the neural network architecture I designed for our AI division, the one you've been taking credit for managing these past 6 months." The next hour in the boardroom was unlike anything anyone present had ever experienced. I walked them through Project Phoenix of architecture, explaining complex quantum computing concepts with the ease of someone who had spent years immersed in the field. With each explanation, each technical detail I elaborated on, James's face grew paler. "But the patents," he finally interrupted, grasping at straws. "They're all in David's name." I pulled up another file. Actually, they're jointly held. David insisted on it, though I wanted to keep using the R.C. Wong persona. I smiled slightly at the memory. He said someday the world would need to know the truth. Marcus Chen, our head of development and no relation despite the shared surname, leaned forward. "The Quantum Bridge Protocol, that was you. The one that solved our coherence issues." I nodded. David was brilliant with hardware, but software was always my strength. We complemented each other perfectly. That's why he never fully explained how certain systems worked, Marcus said, realization dawning on his face. He always deflected to R.C. Wong's documentation. "Because I wrote it," I confirmed. David and I had an agreement. He handled the public face of the company, the meetings, the presentations. I focused on development, on solving the technical problems that kept us ahead of the competition. James had remained unusually quiet, his eyes darting between me and his tablet. I could almost see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find a way to discredit me. "Even if this is true," he finally said, "running a tech company requires more than just technical knowledge. It needs business acumen, leadership skills." "You mean like the skills I used to negotiate our Series C funding?" I interrupted. "The deal I closed with Vector Capital while using the R.C. Wong persona." More murmurs around the table. The Vector Capital deal had been legendary. A $300 million investment on incredibly favorable terms, negotiated entirely through encrypted communications with the mysterious R.C. Wong. "That's right," I continued. "I handled most of our major deals. The investors actually preferred dealing with R.C. Wong. They said they'd never met someone who understood both the technical and business sides so completely." I clicked to a new slide showing our company's growth over the past 5 years. Every major innovation, every significant breakthrough, they all came after R.C. Wong joined the company, after I started working with David. "This is absurd," James snapped, finally losing his composure. "You expect us to believe that all this time, while you were playing the perfect corporate wife, hosting dinner parties and charity events, you were secretly some kind of tech genius." "No," I said calmly. "I expect you to look at the evidence in front of you and make a rational decision about what's best for this company." I turned to address the entire board. "I understand your concerns about leadership, but ask yourselves this: who really knows quantum text technology? Who understands where we're going and how to get there? The person who created our core technologies or the person who's been trying to take credit for them?" The board members exchanged glances. Patricia Morrison, our longest-serving member, cleared her throat. "Mrs. Chen, Rachel, why reveal this now? Why not continue as R.C. Wong?" I thought about David, about our late-night conversations about the future, because David was right. The world needs to know that innovation doesn't look like what they expect. That breakthrough ideas can come from anyone, regardless of their gender, their background, or whether they fit the tech industry's preconceptions. I pulled up one final document, the last email David had sent me just hours before the accident. "My brilliant Rachel, if anything ever happens to me, don't let them push you into the shadows. Show them who you really are. Show them what we built together." "All my love, David. I spent 5 years hiding who I am," I said quietly. "I won't do it anymore. This company needs leadership that understands both its technology and its potential. I am that leader, whether you choose to accept it or not." James stood up abruptly. "This is all very theatrical, but it doesn't change the fact that I have the board's support." I moved to call for an immediate vote on my proposal to purchase Rachel's shares. I smiled. "Actually, James, I don't think you do have the board's support. Not anymore." Marcus Chen was already shaking his head. Not after this. Rachel, or RST. Wang has been the driving force behind every major advancement we've made. We'd be fools to let her go. Other board members nodded in agreement. James looked around the room, watching his carefully constructed plan crumble. This isn't over, he said, gathering his papers. I'll have my lawyers review everything. If there's even a hint of impropriety, of backdated documents or falsified records, you'll find everything in order. I cut in. David and I were very careful with our documentation. But by all means, have your lawyers look. While they do, I'll be focusing on completing Project Phoenix's global rollout, unless you'd like to explain to our shareholders why you're trying to force out the person who actually developed it. He stormed out of the boardroom, leaving a heavy silence behind. Patricia Morrison was the first to speak. I think we've all underestimated you, Rachel. Some of us for years. I thought about all the board meetings I'd sat through quietly, all the times I'd listened to James and others dismiss or minimize my husband's, our achievements. Yes, I said simply, you have. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? The weeks following my revelation were a whirlwind of change. News of R.C. Wang's true identity hit the tech world like a tsunami. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The grieving widow who turned out to be a secret tech genius. The woman who had revolutionized quantum computing while letting others take the credit. Mrs. Chen, a reporter from Tech Weekly, asked during my first public interview, why maintain the deception for so long? Weren't you angry about not getting credit for your work? I sat in my office, David's old office, looking at his picture on the desk. It was never about credit, I said. David and I knew how the tech world would react to a female Asian developer, especially one married to the CEO. We wanted our work to be judged on its merits, not clouded by prejudice or assumptions. The reporter nodded. And your brother-in-law? Sources say he's challenging the authenticity of your work. I smiled, thinking of James' increasingly desperate attempts to discredit me. His lawyers had spent weeks combing through every line of code, every patent filing, every piece of documentation. James is welcome to his doubts, I replied. The code speaks for itself. What I didn't mention was the email I'd received that morning from James's lawyers, quietly withdrawing their challenges. They'd found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Every innovation, every breakthrough had been meticulously documented, jointly credited to David and me from the start. The real surprise came a week later, when I arrived at the office to find Marcus Chen waiting with an unusual request. The development team wants you to do a code review, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. In person. They've been working with R.C. Wang's documentation for years, but now they want to learn directly from you. I spent the afternoon in the development lab, surrounded by engineers who had once seen me only as the CEO's wife. Their respect wasn't grudging or forced. It was earned, line of code by line of code, as I walked them through the systems I'd designed. It all makes sense now, one young developer said. The elegant solutions, the innovative approaches, they had your signature all along. We just didn't know to look for it. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, Patricia Morrison appeared in my doorway. The board has been discussing the future of quantum tech, she said without preamble. We'd like to make your position as CEO permanent. I looked up from my computer, where I'd been reviewing the latest Project Phoenix tests, and James has resigned from the board, effective immediately. She smiled slightly. His last attempt to challenge your work backfired rather spectacularly. Turns out several of his own innovations were actually based on incomplete copies of your prototypes. I wasn't surprised. James had always been better at taking credit than creating something original. There's something else, Patricia continued. We've had inquiries from several major tech companies about potential collaborations. It seems R.C. Wang's reputation carries even more weight now that people know the full story. I thought about David, about our dreams for quantum tech. What kinds of collaborations? Google wants to discuss quantum-enhanced machine learning. Microsoft is interested in integrating Project Phoenix into their cloud security. And SpaceX, she paused for effect, wants to talk about quantum communications for their Mars mission. I looked at David's picture again, remembering our late-night conversations about the future of technology. He had always pushed me to think bigger, to see beyond current limitations. Schedule the meetings, I said. But make it clear, I'll be representing quantum tech as myself. No more shadows, no more hiding. The next month was a blur of meetings, presentations, and negotiations. I spoke at tech conferences, did interviews with major publications, and began mentoring programs for young women in STEM. The story of R.C. Wong became a rallying cry for change in the tech industry. James, meanwhile, had disappeared from public view. The last I heard, he was trying to start his own tech company, but investors were wary. It turned out his reputation for taking credit for others' work had spread. 1 year to the day after my revelation in the boardroom, I stood on stage at the World Technology Summit, preparing to unveil Project Phoenix's global launch. The audience was packed with industry leaders, investors, and media. Quantum computing isn't just about processing power. I began looking out at the sea of faces. It's about seeing possibilities others miss, about having the courage to pursue solutions that seem impossible. I clicked to the first slide, a picture of David and me in our garage where we'd built our first quantum prototype. This is where quantum tech really began, I continued. Not in a fancy lab or corporate office, but in a garage where two people dared to dream big. One of those people worked in the spotlight while the other stayed in the shadows. Today, we're bringing those innovations into the light. The presentation was a triumph. Project Phoenix's capabilities exceeded even the most optimistic predictions. Our stock price soared, and more importantly, we were changing the face of cybersecurity forever. After the presentation, as I was gathering my things, I found a note that had been slipped into my bag. It was from James. Rachel, I was wrong. About everything. I'm sorry. James. I folded the note and put it away. His apology meant little now, but at least he had finally seen the truth, that innovation doesn't care about gender, background, or appearances. It cares about brilliance, determination, and the courage to stand in the light. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the computers and equipment where David and I had spent so many happy hours working together. On my screen was the code for our next big project, a quantum AI system that could revolutionize medical research. You were right, David, I whispered to his picture. The world did need to know the truth. And now they do. I began to type, my fingers flying over the keyboard as new ideas flowed. But this time, I wasn't hiding behind a pseudonym or working in the shadows. I was Rachel Chen, CEO of Quantum Tech, writing code that would change the world. And I was finally completely myself.